for me, art, like the blurb on the book, you heard and saw yourself in that, which means it's not entirely original. It's just a reflection of the experience that we both happen to have. And for me, art that captures what is the same about us is the art that makes us laugh and cry and all those emotions that make it worth exploring something artistic.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. Creativity, it's not magic. It's actually a habit you can train. Mark Firehammer is a songwriter, novelist, and systems thinker who spent decades proving that craft beats chaos. His new novel, The Echo and the Voice, pairs fiction with a companion album, an AI-assisted soundtrack designed to help readers reclaim the voice culture taught them to silence. We talk about creativity as a daily practice, how iteration beats inspiration, and Mark's alternative to fitness that he calls feelness. 9 natural movements that restored his mobility and joy. If your voice has gone quiet or your body feels stuck, this episode might be a roadmap to get you back where you want to be. Mark Firehammer, thank you for being here on A Joyful Rebellion today.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for having me, James. I appreciate it. And I just want you to note that I put on my most joyful shirt.
I love it. If you're listening on one of the podcast apps, go over to YouTube. We're on YouTube now. You can see Mark and I having this conversation in video, and maybe just not if you're driving, though. Not that, but maybe later when you're settled. So, Mark, I want to talk about a lot of the stuff that you've been doing. You've got a new book that's out. It's called The Echo and the Voice. And I want to talk about that, but if people are listening, a lot of times they hear me talk to someone who has been through their own joyful rebellion, maybe helps others get through theirs. You've got that situation, but a lot of times I'm talking to someone who's kind of focused on one track. But for our conversation today, we're going to talk about something that kind of runs through a lot of different things you're interested in and that you work through in your life, and that's creativity. I want to talk about how you discovered creativity runs through your health and wellness journey, how creativity, you use that when you talk to people about reclaiming their own voice, and how a lot of cultural and societal pressures really get people to give up their own voice. And
sad,
so I want to dive into that. So if you're listening and you're thinking, oh my gosh, they're all over the place, we may be, but we're going to bring it back to how you creatively kind of tackled these things for yourself and are helping others do the same.
Creativity is that common thread. That's what they're going to take away from this.
I own my own business, and a lot of times in business, you can either dump money into something and fix a problem, and that can get you results, and you can't get that money back necessarily. But when you dump creativity on a problem to solve it, you not only get to solve the problem, you get to be involved in solving the problem, but you also have that satisfaction of you learned something along the way. You got a little stronger along the way, and creativity is, in my experience, kind of like that muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it grows.
Well said. I often refer to creativity as a habit. And for me, I've been able to maintain my creativity since my earliest age to now I'm 62 because it's a habit. And that's sort of the same thing as it's a muscle.
Yeah.
Right? If I use the muscle every day, then it becomes a habit. That's a strong muscle.
Absolutely. Let's talk about creativity, because we talked about it being a muscle, and we talked about it being something that can also be a habit. Tell me if you've had this experience, because I talk to people just out on the street, people I know, people I meet at an event, and they say, oh gosh, I wish I could be creative like that. I read some of what you've written about creativity, and you suggest that creativity is not necessarily just this thing you're born with that washes over you in the moonlight on the beach at some point, you know, if you're inspired. It's a system. And how would you describe, you know, someone's listening right now and they're like, wait, this doesn't sound very creative. That sounds pretty technical. So when you're trying to convince someone that creativity is a system, how do you explore that? How do you explain that to them?
Yeah, that's a good question, James, and I like to talk about it because it is the foundation of everything that I've accomplished in life. Creativity, when it comes to systems, is where I start. If I'm loving something, I feel joy when I do it, think it, see it, hear it, whatever the case may be, then that's where I start, because I learned that as a 5-year-old from a flower. And there's an opening scene in my book that's a tulip with a 6-year-old boy. And the flower doesn't ask permission to be a perfect flower. And I took that into my life, and I take that into my business as well, is there's a perfection in what occurs naturally. And if what occurs naturally makes you feel good, that's where you start, right? And if you can build a business around something that occurs naturally and makes you feel good, and it can be turned into a deliverable of some sort,
Yes.
then now you're really on the right track. At that point, all you're doing is then applying the principles of the universe and of business that are known to produce a desired outcome.
Exactly. Now, when you write novels, which you've written The Echo and the Voice, you write under a pen name.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit before I hit record about why you do that. And you kind of like your pen name a little bit better sometimes. Talk about that.
So much better. I've been a Firehammer my whole life. You know, I always joke here in New England, apparently it's a thing that, no judgment, some people change their name. It's a spiritual thing.
Okay.
So, you know, Allison Weber becomes Fire Blossom something, right?
Yeah.
And so here, when I moved here almost 20 years ago, people would come up to me and say, so what's the point of the Firehammer? I said, well, I was born a Firehammer. My daddy's a Firehammer. My daddy's daddy was a Firehammer. That's my name, right? I didn't make that up. But my experience as a soft, sensitive boy that turned into a man, it didn't serve me well. It was too aggressive. It was too, you know, yes, fire can be creative, but the knee-jerk reaction is that it's destructive. And as a musician of 20 years in the business, it didn't really serve me very well. My records were in with heavy metal, if it was alphabetical.
Oh, geez.
You know, yes.
Okay.
So I made the decision when I wrote the novel. My mother and father are both gone. My mother most recently passed. And she was really my only ally in a family of 5, which is fine. I wasn't at all damaged by that. In fact, it helped me be who I am. And her family's name back in the motherland of Sweden, you'd have to go 3 generations to find that person, was Kindblom. And I thought, okay, what better time than now to not only take a name that resonates with what I'm writing and who I am, but honors the legacy of my mother as an ally to my creativity.
Wow.
And it feels just really right, everything about it. Yeah.
That's great. So anyone looking for this book, you're going to look under J.W. Kindblom.
Yeah, spelled just like it sounds. I say Kindblom, but it's spelled Kindblom.
It is. And are you cool if I read the, not even excerpt, but it kind of sets it up, what the book is about?
Absolutely.
And when I read it this morning, I was like, oh, wow, I know that guy. But it says The Echo and the Voice is a modern allegory about what gets lost when we trade creative truth for cultural belonging and what it takes to reclaim it. Jonas Wilder, a gifted observer and reluctant rebel, moves through a world that rewards silence, performance, and forgetting. But something inside him refuses to be erased. When I read that, I was like, oh, I know that dude really well because, gosh.
You resemble that remark?
Yes. So we'll move into the second paragraph of this thing, and it says, this is a story for the quietly defiant. For anyone who's ever felt out of step and dared to wonder if that misstep was actually a signpost. And at its heart, it's not just Jonas's story, it's yours. The Echo in the Voice doesn't demand answers. It offers a frequency, a question, and the space to finally listen, which kind of sums up what this whole podcast is about. Like, wow, we've been operating, so many people I know, myself included, sounds like you relate to this as well, but been operating in a world that wasn't really set up for them. It wasn't really set up for their success. And they had to go through a lot of just getting knocked around by it until we said, you know what? I can choose differently. I'm at a point in my life where I can choose differently.
That's the word.
Yeah.
The choose.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said it because it's lost, I think, on a lot of people because it's been going on for so long that they have forgotten that there are more options. In fact, infinite options other than the ones that culture encourages you quite forcefully to lean toward.
Yes, indeed. Well, you have a life in music. You have a life in writing novels, clearly. What was it that gave you the idea, you know what, I'm going to take some of the experiences. There's a story in me and I need to tell it and I need to make the character. We're going to name him Jonas Wilder. And then you went from there. Tell a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I always knew I would write a story. I didn't know until December of last year what form it would take, right? I didn't know if it would be allegory, would it be mystery? I didn't know. But in January, a friend of mine who just wrote a book on a culture shift using AI, he introduced me to a music tool called Suno AI. And having been a songwriter professional for 20 years, but still writing even today, I realized that prior to that moment, I was a man without a band because I had retired. And being a prolific and craft-oriented writer, I knew that much of my writing would never be heard, at least not in the voice that I heard in my head. But these tools allowed me to take the song as I heard it in my head and through an iterative process, which AI is all about iteration and prompting, get it to exactly, not a little, but exactly the way I heard it in my head. So it's like, oh my gosh, there it is right there. Wow. Because there was a set of a dozen or so songs that told the story as the main character, Jonas Wilder, lives it in the book.
Oh, I like it.
Right? So what's unique about the novel is that there's also an album at the end of the novel.
Huh.
And cool. The novel points to the fact that the album goes beyond creating to entertain. It's entertaining, it's beautiful to listen to, and if you're not paying attention, you'll miss the other piece, which is it's sequenced and coded for someone who's paying attention to wake up and to realize that they themselves have a voice, and this album is a roadmap on where to pick it back up again, how to know you've lost it, how to see it in others. So the album points back to the book points to the album, and I won't tell you anymore because it'd be a spoiler.
Yeah, that's so cool. So it's like Pink Floyd's The Wall, except hopeful.
Yes, there you go.
Like,
there you go.
That's pretty awesome. I love when things can mix. Media can mix a little bit like that.
Yeah, and I realized just now that I didn't fully get to the answer to your question, which is why did I write the book when I did? When I realized that I could do this with the music, it all began to come into my mind, especially when I was sleeping. I'd go to bed thinking about it. I'd get up 3, 4 in the morning. I have a whiteboard. You can't see it here in my office. And I write down the things that I thought about in my dream, go back to bed. And this was December the 20th-ish, by January 7th or 8th, I already had the story arc written and the character blueprints underway.
Yeah.
The 7 main characters, all clearly defined. Who are they? Where are they from?
Oh, wow.
What is their worldview? What is their psychology? And being a systems guy, over here we're back to systems and creativity again. When you have the full story, where it starts, where it goes, where it ends, and all the characters that make it happen, it becomes a real joyful journey to write it. Because like the architect building the sophisticated building, the blueprint tells the builder what to do, what piece goes where and why. And so the writing process, defined by a moment of awakening that I can make music fast and accurately, according to how I hear it in my head, the entire album is this character. But it's completely AI generated. If I didn't tell you that, you wouldn't know it.
That's super cool. That takes us back to the whole concept that a lot of people I talk to who aren't in the arts. I'm a photographer by training, by profession, and a lot of people see that as being really creative. And sometimes it is, but not in the way that people think, oh, you just get to do whatever. You get inspired and you see all the beauty in the world. And yeah, there's some of that, but I think everyone has at least some of that. But it's the myth busting I like to do about creativity, where people think that you just are born with it and it gets downloaded into you. And now, why the heck are we talking about systems for creativity? Why are we talking about any sort of methodology? Because creativity to so many people seems chaotic. It seems like something that just you swirl in your, like you said, your dreams. But everything you just described proves the point, just really bolsters the point that you had a dream. Like, okay, dreams are chaotic. You're kind of at the whim of whatever your subconscious brings up to you, whatever's going on in that dream. But then you woke up and you wrote it down. A lot of people would think, okay, what's up with that? He wrote it down. Okay, it seems like work. Okay, that's fine. Then you went back to dreaming, daydreaming, dreaming at night, whatever it was, but bit by bit. And that's what creativity is so often. It's that bit by bit. It's not one big download from the clouds. It's that iteration that you talked about. So you had to get together with the AI and you're like, this is what I want. And it gave you a result. And if music AI is anything like imagery AI that I've been working with, that first result was like, oh, okay, this is useless. I'm going back to just doing this myself. Then you give it another prompt and it was like, all right, okay, that's cool. And then by like the 12th prompt where you're just this close, and then the whole thing, in my experience, the whole thing goes sideways and gives me something that I'm like, this is garbage. I am not going to try this again. But then you're like, gosh, I've come this far, and you do that one more thing and it's like beautiful. It's amazing. Like, I can't believe this exists. And that's what creativity is. It's just that constant little inching forward, back and forth until you get to the result you thought might be possible. You weren't sure. You're never sure. But then you're like, ooh, this is cool. I've never done this before. And tell me if you've had this conversation with people, but a lot of times I talk with people and they mistake creativity for like inventing something. They think that if you're going to be creative, you have to come up with something that's never, ever been done before. It's totally brand new to the world. And man, that's hard.
That's too much pressure.
Yeah, if that's the bar for creativity, then why even bother? But no, creativity can be something you've personally never done before or a problem you've never solved.
Yes, I feel a little bit empathy and sorry for those people. They didn't come to that conclusion on their own.
Yeah.
They heard it and then they heard it again, and that became their version of the truth about creativity.
Yeah.
But like the contents of our mind on any subject, what we come to believe, if we don't open ourselves up to maybe a correction and finding something else to believe, we're stuck there, right? Nothing else becomes possible. And for me, if that was creativity and the pressure was come up with something so original, no one would be able to liken it to anything, there's really no audience for that. Because for me, art, like the blurb on the book, you heard and saw yourself in that, which means it's not entirely original. It's just a reflection of the experience that we both happen to have. And for me, art that captures what is the same about us is the art that makes us laugh and cry and all those emotions that make it worth exploring something artistic.
That is spot on. And that comes through work. It comes through that iteration. It comes from writing down a paragraph and reading it and thinking, oh, that's not great. But if I do this, if I do that, and then I can bring the reader back into this scene instead of just telling them about it. And a lot of people don't like this when I share this secret about creativity with them, but it's just problem solving. That's a lot of what creativity is, solving a problem. You write a paragraph and you're like, ugh, this doesn't add to it. So then you have to solve that problem.
Yes, especially the written word. You're absolutely right. The written word is a line, right? And you have to solve the problem of how do I get from one place to another place and have it move.
Have it make sense and keep the reader engaged. And with words, that can be another level of interesting because you may be writing about a specific place in the world where they use language a little bit differently than most people. So are you going to bring them into that world? How far are you willing to have the person scratch their head and say, I don't know what they're talking about at this point because you're using the local vernacular a little too much. So let's bring everyone listening into, without giving too much away, what Jonas's world is like. And what is it about the world he lives in that has taken away a lot of his voice? And when does he start to realize, you know what, this isn't for me?
Yeah, true. I'm glad you asked. Jonas is a young man who, in his worldview, he chose to be in the family he was born to. He chose a family where he'd be the last of 3 children, where the parents were disengaged, where the father was a tyrant, because he knew in this lifetime that he needed resistance. He needed something to push against in order to build his own strength to resist the flattening nature of culture, the culture that wanted to put him into a box. And his father was really good at that. His dad was like, these are the rules. You have 30 seconds to make this decision. If he goes to 31 seconds, I make the decision for you. So the father is a metaphor for culture as a whole.
Yeah.
And one of the things as a young man he begins to realize is that everyone around him is subject to some degree to that same flattening and that same squaring off, and that even his supposed allies are not necessarily allies. They family and friends, they should be, but when you look at it in another way, they're actually trying to stop you from being the unique and creative and curious person that you came into the world knowing you were, but quickly began to doubt if you should be because of all the messages. So he learns early on to navigate that almost scientifically, to be an observer and say, question everything, and don't rebel necessarily out loud because that can come with serious consequences. But Jonas likes to say, if a door shuts, he looks for a window. Right? He looks for a window. It doesn't tell anybody he's looking for the window, but he finds that window, opens it up, and he makes his own path and creates his own world that lives in his imagination and then manifests outside of him. And he does that through his whole life. Only he never loses his voice, but he comes very close to being so scared of the threats of being himself that he withdraws only long enough to catch his breath and realize, okay, this is just the system seeing me and being afraid of me being unique. I'll find another way. I'll find another way. And so he soldiers on and learns a lot of really, really interesting lessons along the way while holding on to that thread that is uniquely his.
It's like that paragraph said, it is definitely Jonas's story, but it is so many of our experiences in our own unique way. And like you said before, creativity is not inventing something, it's nothing new. It's creating something in a way maybe we've not experienced before, but we can also relate to and appreciate. And that gives someone like a reader of this story deep appreciation for what makes Jonas a human and part of the same experience that we've been a part of for however many years we've been doing it. And I want to just take it back, and you as the creator of this story had to solve all of these creative problems that your protagonist solves, because every great hero has to have a villain of some sort. In this case, villain's a little bit of culture is the background there. We've got his father who shows up early on, maybe as standing in that role, but you can't save the world unless there's a world to save. And sometimes that world is your own.
Exactly.
So this is really fun. And bringing that level of creativity is something it sounds like you think about day by day, because you've broken down what the process needs. In your music career, you said you've been in music business, writing songs and recording for many years. How far into that before you realize, oh, this creativity is kind of a system? So if I'm going about writing a song, it's not a cookie cutter system, because people hear systems, they're like, oh, a conveyor belt. And
Right.
you just do this, you do this. It's not quite A to B to C. Sometimes creativity is like A to H to, gosh, come back to G, and then you
Yeah.
go over here. And then you start back at A because none of that worked. So when was it in your earlier life and career that you learned how to systematize your creativity?
In the music business, when I went to New York in 1989, I was in my mid to late 20s, and I wanted to get a record deal. But when I got there, that's when I realized that music is an industry, and making records is an industry, and it's not about saving the world. It's about the accountants and the lawyers running the show and controlling things for the most profit. So one of the things I like to make the distinction, system as opposed to industry. System can be a natural system. Life on the planet Earth is a natural system. It's governed by principles of quantum physics and matter and energy. Whereas civilization or culture is an artificial system that some humans devised and, launched. When I entered the music business, got to New York, I did what I had to do to try to get my sound in front of executives in the record business. I got a job as a butler for Sony Music World Headquarters.
Nice.
So I was in Midtown Manhattan serving guys like Tommy Mottola his lunch and dinner. I'd take the elevator up from the kitchen and bring him his food in his office. We all know that building. Did you see Wall Street with Michael Douglas? Greed is good.
Oh, man. Yeah.
That scene in the boardroom, that's the Sony headquarters boardroom.
Okay.
Right. So it's a very famous building.
Oh, so they could film it pretty cheap. The rent was pretty cheap on that set. That's funny.
So here I am in the belly of the beast, thinking that I was going to run into A&R people and creatives, when all I really ran into were business people, suits, accountants, lawyers. And Pearl Jam was just coming up at the time, and I served food at the big meetings of all the heads of the departments, talking about the commodity that is Pearl Jam. The way they talked about them as humans was dehumanizing. They didn't talk about them as brilliant, creative, interesting things to be respected and listened to. It was a way to make money.
They were
and I said at that
assets.
moment, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Right? So I went there to get a record deal, but I didn't. Instead, I got a record. I met people outside of the center of the business that were making commercials, that had access to recording facilities, and met some people, and they're like, we like what you're doing. You're cool. You're writing interesting songs. Why don't we just work together? We'll make an album for you. I've never created an album. I've been selling beer and pretzels for the last decade, so let's give you a record and see what you can do with it. And that's what empowered me to be able to then go out on the road, because I had product. Right? If you're out there playing gigs every day and you don't have any merch, you're not going to make it, because they don't pay you enough to play unless you're selling tickets. And at that level of the music business in the 90s, we weren't selling tickets. We're playing colleges and small coffee houses and little bars, and you name it. If they're willing to put a mic in front of me, I was playing there. So yeah, did I answer your question? That's when I realized the industry was not the system I needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when did you realize that when you started approaching a song, for example, you were going to write a new song and you went about it, was there a point at which you started realizing, okay, I need to approach this in a systematic way? Because I know I've been guilty of this, and I know I've had lots of conversations with people who, especially in the music world, just a second ago, we talked about some people confuse creativity with inventing something brand new. Well, I've had a lot of conversations where people confuse a system with a formula. And a formula is kind of like a recipe. You mix X with Y with Z, and then you get this result. With songwriting, if you followed a formula, you might get a similar beat. And I've heard the critique about certain parts of the music industry being formulaic, and like some rap or some hip hop being basically, you take the same beat, you throw a couple words, and you throw a loop, throw a couple samples, and you call it a day. And for that artist, they probably wouldn't agree. But was there a point at which you started saying, okay, if I'm going to write this new song, I'm going to approach it in a systematic way? Or was that later in your career?
No, I was a craft writer almost from the very beginning. I studied the great songwriters of the Tin Pan Alley era. In fact, I had a mentor in the then president of the Songwriters Guild of America, George David Weiss. You probably don't know his name, but you know his music. He wrote I Can't Help Falling in Love with You, Elvis, The Lion Sleeps Tonight. He's got 200 standards to his name. And he was a champion for the songwriter. He's passed away a few years ago. But I would go and pitch songs to him, just show him what I was working on. And he always gave me the right advice, not for the industry, but for the song.
Yeah.
Right? I remember I wrote this song. And he said, so who do you admire? And I said, Dan Fogelberg. I like the way he uses chords. I like the way he uses melody. And he said, okay, what else? I said, well, he always tells stories. He said, okay, so who's telling the story in the song? And fast forward, I said, well, the singer is telling the story. He says, why don't you write the same song, but create a character to deliver the wisdom instead of the singer? And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Right? That song is on Jonas's album.
Okay.
It's track number 2. It's very early on in his awakening to how can I save the world with a song. So to answer your question, it was early on because I studied the greats. And luckily, the greats became great before the music industry was what it is, not what it was. The greats wrote great songs without concern for where it was going to be used. They had something to say and they crafted it the way the song needed to be crafted. You know, there's this saying, don't bore us, get to the chorus. That's very much a 90s and on thing.
Okay.
And it's why most pop music has verse, chorus. So I began writing with structure, not to fit the radio format. Here's a good example. You don't put a bridge in a song unless there's something to cross. Right? Otherwise, it's going to be verse, chorus, or verse. And so it's the song and what you're trying to say, the story you're trying to tell, the message you're trying to deliver that should dictate the structure. And if it ends up being a song that needs a chorus, you write the chorus first. That's my way. Write the chorus first because everything else needs to support that. And I love writing songs where it needs a bridge because that's the redemption oftentimes, or the return if you're retreating from something. It's storytelling in really short form, which is great for honing craft skills because most songs will never go over 5 or 6 minutes. Radio songs, 3.5 minutes tops. And oftentimes great songs will have several versions, one for the radio and then one that's on the album that's more long form. I don't think much about it, but I force myself to keep it under 6 minutes, preferably 5, because I like the discipline of getting the job done in 3 verses, 3 choruses, a bridge, no more. I've only written one song that has 5 verses, but it's about the history of man, so.
Yeah, you're forgiven.
I needed an extra verse.
That's cool. Well, I would love to go down a little rabbit hole pretty quick and put you on the spot if you're okay with that.
Sure.
I would love to hear your thoughts on what's some of, let's say, the top 5 best storytelling songs of all time, like in your mind, the ones that tell the story, just draw you in as the listener, and you don't even know why, but maybe one day you're like, oh, they're telling me a story here, and this story is kind of cool and mysterious, or whatever the story is to that person. And a lot of times it just hits you at a certain time in your life, certain age, whatever it might be.
Tucson, Arizona, Dan Fogelberg.
Okay.
Most people will go, I've never heard of it.
I'm one of those people.
Yes. What's interesting about the song is Dan was at the height of his career, and Rolling Stone panned the song. The only thing they said about it was too long. And I'm like, how can you say that if you've actually listened to the story? Because the song is a story, and it tells the whole story with no detail left out in exactly the amount of time that was necessary. So to say it's too long, it's like Rolling Stone, come on. I used to love you. Now I'm sort of questioning your...
I get it.
So that's number 1 for me, which kind of reveals that I don't care if you're famous or popular. If I hear it and it makes me lean in, that's what I'm into. And a lot of songs like Mr. Tanner by Harry Chapin. Do you know that one?
I don't.
He's a dry cleaner who dreams of being an opera singer.
Oh, okay.
And when he's older, he's in the winter months of his life, and he decides, I'm going to do it. As everybody encouraged him, family and friends, you should do it. He books Carnegie Hall.
Whoa.
And he sings his heart out, every note meant with every fiber of his being. And in the New York Times, the reviewer just crushed it.
Oh.
Yes. So it's really right in alignment with what we're talking about here, is that for Mr. Tanner, it wasn't about fame and fortune. It was about expressing myself in song. And if you want to listen and it brings you joy, that's what matters. But the reviewer just thinking you're not Pavarotti, so therefore you're not worthy. So that is the kind of song and story. When I hear that, I have to sit down and think about what do I want to write next? Because if I can write a story like that, that is so important to understand as creativity is commoditized, it's just a reminder. And it was written 40 years ago. He's been gone since, what year did he die? 1980 something. It was not even 40 years old.
Whoa.
So yeah, he wrote that a long time ago.
Yeah, I love a good story in a song.
I was hoping one or two more would bubble up, but I feel Mr. Tanner in my chest right now, and it's hard for me to... It's like if you're listening to a song, you can't think of it.
No, I gotcha. No, I'll give you mine, which is pretty basic, and it will give a lot of insight and clues into what group of years I grew up in. But I've always maintained that Hotel California is, like, for me, the number one storytelling song.
3 for me.
Okay. Because it just, from the dark desert highway on through the chorus, you're like, you're in this place. And I've had this happen a couple of times where I've walked into a place. And I live on the East Coast, so I don't get out to California much, and that vibe and the weather and all the architecture is different. But I've only had inklings of this where I've walked into a space and felt like this is what that song was written about, being in the Hotel California. That was such a cool feeling, and I didn't even understand what was happening at the time. But on reflection, I was like, oh, that's why it felt so familiar to me. I walk in this new place, never been there before, and I was like, this seems so familiar, but it's because I've been listening to that song for so many decades, and it was like deja vu, and I couldn't explain it whatsoever.
Yeah, that's number 3 for me. If I'd had the presence of mind, I would have brought that one up next.
Okay.
How did you feel about, and I want to hear a couple more from you, but before we move on from Hotel California, City Girls Just Seem to Find Out Early.
That was going to be my second one from the Eagles anyway. I probably hear that song once every 2-3 days.
Lion Eyes.
And yeah, and like you said, the bridge. When you said bridge, I was thinking, okay, that's the exact song that came to mind. I don't even know if it has a bridge in it, but I know she goes from her house to go meet her lover. She comes back to the house and pours herself a strong one and thinks about her life's choices. And yeah, that's another powerful story.
There's not many of us that don't have something that comes close.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not cheating on a spouse, but the emotional content in that moment of, that's big stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So give me another one from your list.
Oh, gosh. This one is going to be obscure for a lot of people, but it's Driver 8 from REM, and it's from, I think it's 82 or 83, their album Fables of the Reconstruction. And essentially, it's about a train engineer and his coworker trading shifts. So it's Driver 8, take a break. You've been on this shift too long, but it takes you through visually. In your mind, you are on that train going through the South. It starts up, the walls are built up stone by stone, the fields divided one by one, and it takes you through all the things you might see while you're on that trip as the train engineer. It's not glossy, it's not glamorous, but as a visual person, and whenever I am driving out in the country, there's still a little bit of that left here in North Carolina. I'll just crank that song up and I'm like, I'm living this song right now. It's pretty awesome.
Roll down the windows.
Oh yeah, you got to roll down the windows.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. So that's probably number 2.
I have not heard that one, but I love it already. I think it's safe to say that, at least talking about you and me, and I think this is probably universal, that a great song story has people in place that you can really connect to, and you carry it with you through your whole life. such to the point that you went to California and you felt you were in that place. Yeah. That's all any of us as a songwriter should hope for, that someday we put something out there that somebody takes with them, maybe even long after you're gone. Yeah. That's the thing that I'm excited about the work I'm doing now, is that I can put out the things I never thought would see the light of day. And when I'm gone in 30 years, somebody's going to go, yeah, that guy was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it takes me back to the book. When you decided to write that book, was there anything that you thought, I know for me, I think you hit a magical age. For some people it's 60, for some people it's 40. Bless them, because you're starting young. But for me, it was 50, where I was like, not much about life scares me anymore. And also, it's about time I get my stuff in gear and like start producing. Because I've been producing since I was in my 20s, been as a photographer. I've been producing creatively and art, and all that's great, but it's been for other people. It's been 100% for other people. And you wrote this novel for other people, but there was something in you that really wanted to get that out. I know you said in December you knew you were going to write a book of last year, and then you had to sort of work through the creative part of what it was going to be. But what was it inside of you that said, you know what, Mark, if you're going to knock this out, go ahead and knock this out?
I gave myself kind of my liberal arts education by reading great novels. I've read everything James Michener ever wrote. And if you know his work, it's like a history lesson in fiction. The timelines are accurate. The characters drive a story through the accurate timelines. So it's a really interesting way to learn about huge swaths, sometimes even millions of years of history. Centennial is a good example. Centennial is where they found the dinosaur bones. So that whole novel takes place in Centennial, but he goes back in time to the dinosaur age and then forward in time to modern civilization. And a book by him when he was alive took 10 years and a full staff of researchers just to get the data together to write it. And it's hard to imagine, how did he write so many with that kind of process? So that being said, I do go on sometimes. That is the kind of book that taught me of kind of where the disconnection began for human beings, the beginning of an artificial way of existing. Because we're natural. We're a species, right? You ever watch The Big Bang Theory?
1 or 2 episodes.
We love the theme song. Over 14 billion years ago, expansion started. Wait, right? So I learned about that history and where humanity began. Scientists agree like 2 million years, civilization 10,000. That's only 0.5% of the human saga. As culture, especially here in America, we are not humanity. This is a very artificial way of living, and I knew I wanted to write a book that contributed to an awareness of the beginning of disconnection from ourselves and then each other, that contributed in a way that books didn't quite go all the way for me. Ishmael by Daniel Quinn is one of the most brilliant examples about this. If you've never read it, you should give it a visit. It was a very formative book for me, but it didn't have the characters that I thought just maybe might make the message a little bit more accessible to a younger generation. In that book, the main messenger was a gorilla, which is really cool mechanism character-wise, but I think hard for modern young minds, especially the screen-oriented type, to really relate to that. You could read that book over and over again and learn a little more about that history as written down every day. So anyway, I knew I wanted to write something that was a nod to those authors and tie in creativity with the period of time when creativity was being removed by systems and structures that we're indoctrinated into. And I think I accomplished it. I may not know the impact until long after this life, but that's okay, right? And I am of the belief that matter and energy doesn't go away. It just changes position and, and location. And I don't think it's my first time around, and I certainly don't think it's going to be my last.
I love hearing, I kind of call it origin stories of when people sort of say, okay, I've been thinking about doing this for a while. It's time to pull the trigger, so to speak, and get it done. I want to take another little left turn and talk about another way that you've gotten creative in your life.
Yeah.
And that is with what a lot of people think and call and identify as fitness or their health. I know you got a lot to say about it because you write about this and you call it something called feelness. How does creativity play into what you've discovered there? Because for everyone listening, we're taking a hard left turn. We're going from the book to how your body moves.
Yeah, I'll try to be as concise as I can because like you say, I have a lot to say about this. But let me give you just 30 seconds of background. Okay. I'm 62. At 58, I began to experience the body starting to make that sound, oof. I call it oof. And I saw my parents do it. I see people all around me, my peers on Facebook that I don't see them anywhere in real life. I just follow their lives online. Many of them are disintegrating before our eyes. And there's a cultural belief system that says it's inevitable.
Oh, yeah.
And because I've had the experience of an active lifestyle without fitness that didn't include sports or athletics, but just very active touring, lifting equipment, living on the ground, a lot of sleeping bags in my touring days. That was by choice. I didn't want to be in a hotel because you never know where you're at. I slept on the ground and in trees. So what I didn't realize I was experiencing then in the 90s was a body that was being used in a way that it was designed. And like I said before, we're a species. We're perfect. We come into this world already perfectly designed. And civilization and culture has given us a lifestyle where we don't flex, extend, and rotate all of our appendages every day. So the natural thing for a natural system that's not used is that it atrophies. So fast forward, I'm in partnership for the last 12 years with one of the most brilliant physical people. She's a Pilates teacher, owns a Pilates studio, is a senior trainer for an organization that teaches Pilates instructors worldwide. She's a choreographer. She's a former dancer. She knows more about the body than anyone I've ever met. Being a systems guy, knowing I live in a system, my body is my ride. When I was a teenager, my Mustang was my ride, yeah. Right? But now as a human being, my body is my ride, and I'm watching her, and I'm learning she knows how the system works. She doesn't go to the gym either. So I learned everything I could from her and said, okay, let's make a system. And I'm going to tie this into the creativity now. That instead of looking outside of me and saying, I want my body to look like that guy or that girl. I want the ripped abs. I want the big guns. I want that. I'm convinced by the marketplace that that's desirable. That's what fitness is all about. It's about finding the answer and the goal outside of you. I knew from my experience that the answers are already in me because I'm a human and I'm already perfect. So I took that and began to just feel my body. I put earplugs in, lay on the floor, and then move around and listen from the inside, forgetting everything on the outside, listening to the little clicks and the pops, asking about what they are, because I have an expert at my fingertips. What am I experiencing? So the end result was, using this creative approach, I was beginning to listen to the language that my body's been trying to talk to me the whole time. As you get older and you begin to go, you bend over to pet the cat and you go, ooh. Yeah. All that is your nervous system saying, hey, buddy, you're not using your body in the way that my 7 areas need to stay in good relationship with one another. So I said to Katrina, let's sit down and let's come up with a prescription for the 9 tasks that a good, mobile, healthy human being has to do from birth to death. Get out of bed in the morning, or for me, get off the floor. We sleep on the floor. That's just a lifestyle choice. Walk to the kitchen. I want to make that first cup of joe. I keep my beans on the top shelf. Why? That's number 3, reaching for the beans. Okay. My shoulders need to go through that motion. Yeah. And if I keep everything low, I never know if I'm starting to fall apart. Right? So that's 3. Okay. Next, bending over, pet my beloved cat. He's trying to get my attention, right? How's that feel? Walk to the dining room table if I have one. Sit down on a chair. Get back up from the chair. We're up to what, 6 now? Get down all the way down to the floor. Get all the way back up from the floor. That's 8. The last one, number 9. Remember the days when you didn't have a backup camera in your car? Yeah. You look over your shoulder, right? If you can't do that without going, ooh, or if you only get, to 45, that's a problem. You're not using the rotation of your shoulders and your neck. So Katrina and I sat down and we came up with groups of 7 movements. And we don't call them exercises because in fitness, an exercise has load and repetition. Because the only way to achieve the physical transformation that you see across the gym in that guy or gal is extreme load, extreme repetition. Because you're literally tearing down and building up muscle fiber, and in the process, developing strength that you do not need in your life. You can't look like that without steroids, without building superhuman strength, which we don't need. Right? Nobody needs to be able to lift 300 pounds unless you're a pro athlete or a dancer or something that requires that. So feelness brings it all back. What do I need to be happy, healthy, move well without complaint? And how do I build that into my lifestyle? You can't see it, but on the wall, there's 3 plaques that have the 9 tasks with the date that I had a problem with it. And then the next one, 3 months later, is a check mark, all done.
Wow, okay.
Right? In December of 2023, I had 4 out of 9 problems. Feet on my left, plantar fasciitis. Knee on my right, tendinitis.
Okay.
Hip on my right, probably hip flexor pain, who knows. Intermittent low back pain. So walking became difficult. That's 4 out of 9. I sat down, took the prescriptions that we had made. In 28 days, 3 of those 4, 832 minutes total. That's 10 minutes twice a day for 28 days. 3 out of the 4 were fixed completely. In another 14 days, the 4th was fixed completely. Now, all 9 are clear. I don't have a single complaint, and I'm almost 3 years older.
Wow.
And it's all about from the inside, not looking in the mirror. I'm holding 20 pounds I don't need. But guess what? I can get up and down from the floor with a full martini glass and not spill a drop. Right?
That's right.
And not use my hands.
And that is what makes life beautiful, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. That's amazing.
When I think about my parents, the case that I like to make for something like this is if you can spend 20 minutes a day moving gently and enjoyably, and you can keep your physical capacity, you're going to end up not like my parents. There were 2 consequences. In their 70s, they both fell and broke their hip, changing their life forever. They had accumulated wealth, like we're all taught to do, but they spent every penny of it and more trying to hold on to their health. So their journey ended in tragedy. But now that they're gone, they're not telling that story. As their legacy, the story I'm telling is I don't have to end up there, and neither do you. So that's what I like to say is the legacy of my parents who bought into all of this artificial systems, conformity, create wealth, hoard wealth, accumulate belongings, let your body fall apart, and then regret it when it's too late to do anything about it. And my friends that are in financial planning, none of them are talking about this. If you saved $2, $3, $4 million and you have a tragic physical ailment and you live another 20 years, you're not going to have that money left. You're going to spend it all. So the best investment that a human being can make is in their body, not in expensive furniture, not in a gym membership, not in doing things that you don't enjoy and you aren't comfortable for the rest of your life. Just invest in the natural creative brilliance of your own body, and feelness is a no-brainer way to do that. Do it for 3 months at $20 a month if you want to subscribe. You don't need it after 3 months. You could keep it. We'd like you to keep it, but you don't need it anymore as long as your lifestyle after that has included the natural movements that allow you to maintain it.
Now, somebody is interested in knowing more. I'm on your website, markfirehammer.com. Can they learn about it from there, or is there somewhere else that's good to check out?
Yeah, if you click on the link at the top that says Work with Purpose, that'll take you to a page that has both feelness, J.W. Kinbloom, the author, and our fitness platform. We have a fitness platform as well. Because honestly, some people like to work out.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with fitness if you like it.
I don't understand those people, but yeah.
I don't either. But I know some in my life, and I do not judge them for loving it. Move toward what you love all the time, and you're going to be full of joy for the rest of your life. So I fully support fitness when it makes you happy.
That was really eye-opening because it sounds like a lot of what you were describing with the different movements and the 7 different combinations. It sounds more like balance and flexibility take importance over strength. Strength is still important if you are not using your muscles. Like you said, they're going to atrophy and you've got to get the minimum, but you don't need to be ripped in your 70s, be chest pressing or deadlifting or whatever the people do that lift weights. I don't know.
That's well said. My lifestyle has me doing at least 30 to 40 squats a day by getting up and down from the floor. I'm not doing a squat, but I'm getting up and down from the floor. I like to call it row flextension. Rotation, flexion, and extension of all 7 areas of the body. That's all fitness really is. And if you can build that into your lifestyle after you restore your capabilities with feelness, you're good for the rest of your life. Like the folks in Okinawa. Have you seen the documentary, The Blue Zones?
I haven't.
It's 5 places on Earth where a small culture of people, they live to 100, and they live beautifully well, moving through the very end. And how they do that. And Okinawa is my favorite example, which is why we ground live. We have a beautiful place. When I tell people about it, they're like, oh, it sounds like your college kids living in a dorm. You're too poor to buy furniture. Our house is beautiful, but everything's low.
Okay.
All the art is moved down the wall. All the rugs feel good on your body and have padding underneath. There's things to play with. There's lots of toys. So when you're down there, you have a reason to be down there. And boy, I spring up out of bed in the morning with no groans or moans. I'm 62 years old. I feel better now than I did when I was 50.
Yeah, wow.
And the cat loves it too. The cat's like, dude, you're one of me now, man. Let's play.
That is great. Well, Mark, is there anything, I know we've talked about a ton of different stuff, which was exactly what I was excited to do. And for anyone who's been on this journey with us, listening, watching, thank you for sticking with us. I know you've gotten a lot of different perspectives, but do you feel like there's anything we haven't covered that you think might be good to talk about?
Just one thing. I like to tell people who ask me the question, what can I do to find my voice again and to find joy again? I tell them, grab a piece of paper and for the next 7 days, write down everything you can remember as early as you can remember that you loved, that made you wonder, that gave you joy, that made you happy. Write it all down until you can't write anymore. Once you're done with that, whether it takes you a day, a week, or a month, then just do that every day for 30 days. Do something on that list every day for 30 days, and then write to me and tell me what happened. And the answer is going to be, oh my God, I'm so much happier.
Yeah.
Do what you did at the beginning, and you'll feel like you did in the beginning.
And that's so cool because if I'm thinking about it right, it's kind of the opposite of what you did for the list that's behind you with the little things that were going on in your body. And so you wrote those down and then you started doing some things, you addressed them. And why that's so brilliant is because anyone who's heard more than maybe 2 of these podcast episodes has heard me say that the one thing that almost all of my guests have in common is that nothing really changed or shifted. No joyful rebellion was even thought of until there was awareness around what needed to change, what needed to happen, or what was going on in the first place. Like that list behind you, your body's pretty good about making you aware of things sometimes.
Slap you right up the side of the head.
The most indignant thing is when you're reaching for the Tylenol or the ibuprofen and your body's like, yeah, don't do that so fast, or whatever the deal is.
Let's talk about why. Yeah, let's talk about why first.
Yeah, but getting back to what you wrote down and then you started addressing them. Now, what you're suggesting is kind of the opposite. You write down things that used to make you joyful that maybe you've forgotten about. Maybe life took over. Maybe you got all those fun responsibilities that grown-ups get when you graduate, then you get the job, then you get the family, then you get the college fund started, and all the good stuff that at some point feels a little heavy.
Well, there's a method to the madness, James.
Yeah, then you go back and look at that list and you're like, oh, well, I could fit this or that in. If it was painting, you could fit that in a little bit.
Exactly. And if one of the things on the list requires you to get into a physical position that you discover is difficult for you now at your age, there's the inspiration you need to take some action. And hopefully you're now aware that fitness is not the only option. There are ways to move to restore function without becoming a superhuman. function is what matters. I want to have a good ride. I don't need to look like He-Man. So the list of joyful things is probably going to make you aware of your body again, and that's going to motivate you to take action. Because digging worms as a kid, down in a squat, as a kid squatting, you don't even think about it.
You're there.
Now, the average person my age, if you ask them to squat, they don't last 30 seconds, if they can even get their butt down to their heels. But for me as a kid, digging the worms early in the morning when they're closer to the surface, and then putting them in a can, grabbing my cane pole, going down to the local pond that I could walk to, and catching a fish, and then letting them go, that brought me more joy than anything that I ever did as an adult, because something about being an adult told me I should be doing that, or friends were doing it, so I do it too. So yeah, it's the childhood things. Move toward what you love.
You know what just popped in my mind, and this is so random, but when you just described the fishing and digging worms, in my mind, for some reason, went to that movie Citizen Kane. You ever watch that? Where in the first scenes in the movie, he loved his sled. And his sled was called Rosebud. And then that gets taken away because he has to move away, and then he becomes this huge success, very wealthy. But his last words were Rosebud, because that's what brought him joy. But he had this whole life that kind of moved away from that. And everyone's, well, who's Rosebud? What's Rosebud? What is that? And they weren't there like 40, 50 years before to know that was his fondest, most joyful memory of his whole life, which, how sad is that? Right. So don't be that guy, for sure.
Don't be that guy. Don't forget your sled. Don't forget Rosebud.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, Mari, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this chat today. And I'm going to put your information, your website and everything in the show notes. So if anyone's interested in your book, interested in your feelness, in any of the things that you are into. And you can also, hey, here's a little bonus tip for anyone moving over to the site. You can see pictures of you from the 90s, which is cool. Yes. Yeah, there's some pics.
Some of them I look a little like Chris Christopherson.
It's cool because you're wearing like that pullover thing that we all had in the 90s. I forgot what they were called, but what were those things called? It's like something you would get at the south of the border kind of shop. It had the pouch in the front.
There is a name for it. Yeah.
It's like the early 90s, late 80s version of a hoodie, but it had way cooler textured fabric to it. So,
I'm trying to picture, where am I in that picture?
No, you're on a beach. It was taken by, I'm looking at the contact sheet. They're all black and white. It's by Carol.
Oh, yeah. That
Carol
was the
Stroll.
late 90s. Yeah, Vero Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was at the height of the tour. I called it the Caffeine Tour. Yeah, those were good days.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, cool. Well, Mark, thank you so much for being here. It was a blast.
You're welcome, James. Likewise, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me today. And if you have an extra minute, I have a favor to ask. Some of you listen to this show on Apple Podcasts, and a lot of you I talk to are on Spotify or Amazon. I'd love it if you would take just a second to leave a rating or a review. It lets the platforms know that listeners are getting value from the show and suggest it to others who are interested in similar content. And as always, if you have a topic you'd like me to cover, a guest suggestion, or just general feedback, I'd love to hear about that too. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or at ajoyfulrebellion.com.